Alright, hi again YouTube. So I wanted to finish up what I was talking about the other day when my phone ran out of memory, and then I'm going to talk about a few other things. So sorry about the getting cut off the other day. So I got a new memory card for the phone. So yeah, we were talking about sea level and how they establish sea level, and therefore how they establish inland elevations above sea level, if there is no such thing as sea level, because the sea is actually curved. And if you didn't watch parts 1 and 2, you may want to go back. But I found this video about what is sea level on Minute Physics, and it's just really ridiculous. If you want to check that out, the channel's called Minute Physics. Do a YouTube search for what is sea level, Minute Physics, and it'll come up. And if you want to if you're a flat earther and you want to get a laugh, go check that video out. And I kind of went over it the other day. But then I called this geodetic scientist, and I talked about a little bit on the last video. And we got to the point, he's a really nice guy. I talked to him for like 2.5 hours. And so we got to the point where he's trying to tell me that when you look at, when a level levels, like whether it's on a surveyor transit or a builder's level or whatever, that it's not actually flat. That the level is actually accounting for the curvature of the earth. So when they surveyed their way out into different inland from the ocean, back whenever and still to this day, that because that little tiny level device, which is basically a small little container that has fluid in it, which they use, I guess, alcohol, but water, it's just the fluid that seeks its level, and an air bubble. So anybody that's ever used a level knows how that works. It's pretty simple. So he was trying to convince me, which obviously is retarded, but that level, because it's level, does not mean it's flat, because that liquid is pointing towards this. The gravity is pulling it towards the very center of the earth. So these guys are so convinced by their priests of scientism and their magic that he doesn't even question that. That's just accept, because he was taught that by these priests. Anybody with common sense can figure out that little tiny 1-inch level water, if you're going to keep tying together with a survey transit, well, think about how far the center of the earth is theoretically, if you believe them, is 6,000 miles away to the center of the earth. So you're telling me that the gravity is so precise that little 1-inch level is going to be pointing exactly down to the center of the earth, no matter where it is, even if it's just a foot away from where it was before, that's going to just account for the curvature of the earth. But anybody who's ever used a level and played in water, and besides being a surveyor's helper, at one time I worked on a concrete crew, and we poured floors, and we took if you had to pitch the floor towards the drain, you had to, it was fairly precise work, or if they wanted it to be really flat, so you had to use your level to make it flat, and you could tell if it was flat or not by how the water puddled up on it when you were done. But so anyway, these guys believe in magic, because according to them, the level doesn't matter how many thousands of. Just think about it. Okay, you're leveling the transit, and you're looking through it. It's a straight line. So if you have a straight line going over the curved earth, it's still not allowing for the curvature of the earth, because the line is going straight to the rodman, which was me holding the rod up. And then you shoot a bunch of different shots in a straight line. We used to put the pin flags in a straight line. And then when he couldn't see anymore, it was getting too far away, he'd move the transit down that line to the last place that we shot in elevation. So how is that, that doesn't make any sense at all, that's allowing for the curvature of the earth. You're shooting a straight line, and you're keeping the elevations level, flat, and he's trying to tell me that level does not mean flat. So this is how smart these guys are. They think they're so smart that they can say with a straight face that level is not flat. So anyway, but he was a nice guy. These guys are just so brainwashed and so convinced that their common sense just takes a hike at some point, and they just believe in this magic. And it's like, the other day, so we covered so many different things because the way my mind works and the amount of research I've been doing on flat Earth. And this guy so believes in the globe because he's a scientist. He so believes in the globe model, but they all have circular logic. So I was talking to him about gravity. How do you measure gravity, and what's the device they use? Apparently, it's a spring. But he so believes. He was telling me, well, the center of the Earth is liquid. It's molten lava and it's liquid. I said, well, how do you know that? The deepest they've ever gone into the Earth is 8 miles. That's the deepest hole. He says, oh, no, we've gone deeper than that. Well, no, if you research it, the Russians went down 8 miles. That's as far as we went. And I try to explain to him, we've all seen the pictures of the Earth with the molten center our whole lives, and we've all seen the globes. But when you try to find actual evidence, they go in a circle. Well, the evidence he used for that the Earth was had a liquid center was the fact that satellites were revolving around it, and the gravity keeps them in orbit. I said, but how does that prove that what's inside, or what the mass was of the Earth? He says, we can calculate the mass of the Earth. I said, well, how? You don't know what's inside. He says, well, we've been circling around it with satellites. So I didn't even get into it with him about the satellites because there was no need to, because there's so much other stuff. But they just take this stuff on faith. If we've only gone 8 miles down to something that's 6,000 miles to the center of the Earth, you don't know what's under there. Satellites, he's trying to tell me, can prove the mass of the Earth, and therefore they can calculate the gravity. It's just the more you go into this, and the more you see that the obvious evidence. So he says, well, he says to me, now, the Earth is rotating at 1,000 miles an hour at the equator. He said that to me, which I know from studying flat Earth. And he says to me, well, what do you think keeps you from flying off? Which is something the flat earthers always talk about. And I said, well, I know you're going to say gravity. He says, yes, gravity keeps you, otherwise you would fly off. I said, yes, but on a flat stationary plane, you don't need gravity. And so it's all, and we got into the whole thing about, he was trying to tell me the boat disappears over the ocean, and I had to explain to him all the stuff on YouTube about zooming the boat back in and everything. And then then he brings up light refraction. So instead of actually looking at the evidence that you can see something 50 miles away on the ocean, if its conditions are right, you can see it. If the ocean's flat, you can see it just because you can see it. But if it's round and you see it, you have to come up with another effect, some other type of magic. Therefore the light refraction. There's so many examples of things that work on a flat plane and things that work on a globe. But when they work on a globe, you have to throw in this third kind of magical thing called gravity or light refraction. So, anyway, if you're a flat earther, you know all this stuff already. So I'm not really here to really convince new people that the Earth is flat. There's so much stuff out there that anybody that's really interested in it can find it out. This is more for flat earthers. I just wanted to point out that Minute Physics video if you wanted to laugh, and then the fact that these geodesic guys actually think that level is not flat. So, I mean, it's quite ridiculous the more you look into it. So, the other thing I wanted to talk about, I'm not going to talk anymore about the elevations. To me, it's just so obvious. They'll do anything to hide the fact that when they surveyed these things, they weren't accounting for curvature. They just assumed that they didn't even think about it because you're programmed to think of its globe, so you just go ahead and survey and you don't think about it. But they'll jump through any hoop and any magic to just make excuses. That the fact that to them the ocean is not level when it has to be level to come up with any kind of accurate elevation. And these guys that were surveying back in the 1900s, they didn't have a gravity meter and satellites. They just shot with a transit. So that's when they say, well, level's not flat, and every time they leveled the transit, it was allowing for the curve of the Earth because the stuff was going to the center of the Earth because of gravity. So that's how ridiculous it is. But the other thing I wanted to talk about was planting seeds. So I planted some seeds of truth in this geodetic scientist's brain about the 9/11 demolitions. And also about the moon landings. This guy, this was a pretty intelligent guy. He just was so brainwashed about his field, which was a geodetic science. But, his field is not, because he brought up I think the subject came up when when I said, well, yeah, the flat earthers, they show me the zoom cameras over the ocean, and he's like, oh, he says, yeah, you could find anything on the internet. He says there's people that believe 9/11 was an inside job and the media's controlled by Jews, and I didn't touch the Jew thing, but I said, well, actually, if you look into it, you'll see the evidence it's obvious that 9/11 were controlled demolitions, and I explained to him about Tower 7, which he hadn't even heard of. And I encouraged him to look at side by side, videos of controlled demolitions, and think about the fact that steel frame buildings never collapse from fire, especially fires just burn for a couple hours on a few floors. It's just common sense, just like flat Earth. You just have to look at the evidence. So he sounded like he was going to look into that. And he seemed like he was open-minded to it. Maybe he was humoring me, but I don't think so. And then also about the moon landings, I told him, I said, well, how come there's no pictures of Earth? He says, oh, there's lots of pictures of Earth. I had to explain to him, I said, go to NASA's website, try to find one actual photograph that's not CGI, that's not an oil painting, So I planted seeds. Whether they grow any fruit, who knows? Just like planting seeds of Jesus and the gospel. But, I think the flat Earth is a good way to maybe plant seeds that will eventually lead to Jesus. Now, I found Jesus before I found the flat Earth, but there's a lot of people online who are finding the flat Earth first and giving up on their atheism and then finding Jesus. But in a way, it's kind of easier to start with the flat Earth. I'm not sure, people are different. Some people, it might be easier to start with the flat Earth, and that'll lead them to Jesus. Other people like me, I found Jesus first and then got led to the flat Earth. But so anyway, I planted seeds with that guy. So the other thing, my video got cut short the other day because I ran out of memory on my phone, so I had to buy a little memory thing from T-Mobile, to a little chip to put in my phone. So I had to wait a couple days for it to come in the mail. So when it came in the mail yesterday, I was going to make a video yesterday, but I ran out of time because I ended up talking to the T-Mobile guy. So I called T-Mobile to make sure I was doing this right on my phone. And ended up talking to the guy, asking him some questions because on my videos I'm noticing like it shows 8 comments, but I only see 3. And it came up in the conversation with the T-Mobile guy. He's like, yeah, well, I used to put videos out on YouTube, and I asked him what kind of videos. And he said he was a gamer, and he used to put out game videos. He sounded like a younger guy. And then he asked me what kind of videos I was putting out. I said, well, I'm a flat earther. And he says, well, what's that? You've never heard of it. So I got into it with him, and he seemed really interested. So, I told him about the Flat Earth Awakening on YouTube and some of the solid proofs. I just said, well, water's flat. Think about the oceans and the fact that we all see globes from the time we're born and everything, and just So he was, I ended up talking to him for an hour, and he was writing down stuff. I told him to check out some different channels, and I know different flat earthers. There's this thing on flat Earth. Well, if you like Mark Sargent, you're not supposed to like Eric Dubay, and vice versa. But all those guys helped me find flat Earth, and you may not agree with all their stuff that they say. That doesn't mean that they're shills. Sargent thinks Dubé's a shill. Dubé thinks Sargent's a shill. I don't think either one of them shills. They've come to different conclusions. And, Mark Sargent's got all those good interviews with the engineers and the missile experts, and Dubé's very good at presenting all this stuff in a good fashion. So, this whole shill thing is kind of stupid. I mean, we know there are shills, but that doesn't mean that there's not good information. If you don't believe everything about it that Eric Dubé says, I mean, I love Jesus, so I'm not big on the whole Eastern religion thing, but that doesn't mean that Eric Dubé isn't really good flat Earth guy. And with Mark Sargent, the same thing. I'm not sure that I'm convinced of a dome right now, and the way he puts it as a Truman Show, that might turn some people off. But on the other hand, he's got all those really good interviews with the engineers and the pilots and everything. So, it's just like anything. You use your discernment and you take what you need and leave the rest. So, so I told this T-Mobile kid, check out Eric Dubé, check out Mark Sargent, and I told him to check me out. So anyway, you know, plant seeds whenever you can. And my new job, I've met some new people, and one of the guys I see every day, I ended up talking to him one evening about flat Earth, and he's a very open-minded guy, really super nice guy. And a shout out to you. You know who you are if you see this. And you know, I think I first talked to him about flat Earth, well, probably at least a month ago. And he's not completely flat yet, but you know, I've been linking him with all kinds of vids that I've been checking out, and he's researching it and he's looking into it. And you know, so that's 3 people I've planted seeds with recently that may grow some fruit. So I want to encourage everybody to continue to plant seeds for flat Earth, and if you love Jesus and you know Jesus, always plant seeds for that. Which is why I like to wear my Jesus wear. You can see my sweatshirt I wear there. I've got hats and stuff I wear when I go out, and that starts conversations. Sometimes I run into brothers and sisters who will compliment. They'll say, "Oh, I love Jesus too," and I'll get a good rush of Holy Spirit. And you know, so plant seeds whenever you can, and it's a good thing. It'll give you a good feeling. So I'll talk a little bit about my chickens here. A lot of them are outside today because it's a nice day. These are free-range birds. I have no fences out there. It's a little too bright to be out there. There's still a lot of snow out there and it's sunny, so at some point I'll start doing these vids from outside. I got about 60 laying hens right now. And they're starting to... I keep a light on all winter. That keeps them laying some. But now the warm weather, the days are getting a little longer. And, well, I've been getting about 30 eggs a day out of 60 birds. Now, some of these birds are pretty old, and they're not going to give me an egg a day anyway, but the younger birds, I'll get pretty much an egg a day once the summer comes along. And then I also get a lot of good free food. I got a lot of, I have different sources for leftovers. They get a lot of, like, greens, and I also have restaurant slops They get bread. All kinds of fruit, bananas and avocados, and the eggs are really, really rich and dark. Oh, here's something else I wanted to point out. At some point I may get into symbolism, if you're into symbolism, but here's a nice as above, so below pyramid thing going. You know, I think I mentioned it the other day. I see these Masonic symbols in everything, and I've got a good eye for it. There's my eggs for today. I think there's 27 in there. I'll get some more this afternoon. Zora's covered in shavings. But yeah, so at some point I got to figure out how to make better videos with, you know, editing and stuff. Right now I just turn the thing on and start talking. But and you see the nice flat. I got my roll of flat Earth tape from Flat Earth Addict, Mr. Flat Earth, Mr. Flat Taxi. You can find his channel as a Flat Earth Addict, and I love this tape. So I put some up here in the chicken house as a background for my vid. So, all right, just a little ramble. As you can see, I have kind of a rambling style. But this is going to be my last talk about elevation, but I am going to keep making videos. I want to get into my truther and my Jesus testimony, which is going to take a bunch of parts. You know, I'm going to try to keep the vids 10 minutes. I don't even know, maybe 15. This one looks like there's 18 already. But there are so many dots to connect, and how God and Satan and Jesus were all fighting for my soul my whole life. And when you know, it's just amazing how God works. So I have a lot to cover. I've had kind of a very interesting life. I've never really fit in with mainstream. I lived in the woods in a cabin for 15 years and used to grow all my own food. But anyway, we'll get into that another time. I hope you guys have a great day. I love you guys. Ciao.